Okay. No opinion. No opinion. With your girl, Nick. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of No Uterus, No Opinion with your girl, Nicole. I am super excited to be back with you guys again, and today we are going to be talking about hormones. So you want to write this stuff down because it's so much and it's a lot to encompass. So go get a pen, get a paper, get your phone ready, get your laptop, get whatever you need, and then we will get into this. Okay, so let's start off by understanding what exactly is a hormone. So a hormone you can think of as a little chemical messenger, and it tells your body when to start and when to stop certain processes. One of the big major chemical messenger hormones is estrogen, and estrogen is also one of two sex hormones that are commonly associated with people assigned female at birth. So that includes cisgender women, transgender men, and non-binary people. Now, there are three major forms of estrogen. The first one is called estrone, or E1, and that's the primary form of estrogen that your body makes after you go through menopause. The second one is called estradiol, or E2, and that's the primary form of estrogen in your body during your reproductive years. It's the most potent form of estrogen as well. And the third one is called estriol, or E3, and that's the primary form of estrogen that pumps through your bloodstream during pregnancy. So we know that estrone, E1, is the primary form of estrogen that your body makes after menopause. So during this discussion, we're referring to estrogen, but just keep in mind that we're not referring to estrone or E1 whatsoever. So none of this applies to post-menopause. This is all going to be information that occurs during your reproductive years and or during pregnancy. When it comes to the reproductive cycle, estrogen plays a huge role in ovulation. And if you remember from the previous podcast that we did, ovulation is when your ovaries release an egg, and the egg then prepares to travel down the fallopian tube to be met by the sperm and then create an embryo. And when that happens, estrogen is also part of what thickens the lining of your uterus to prepare it for that embryo to be able to implant. So what we see is estrogen really peaking in the days leading up to your ovulation, and that signals to the uterus to start thickening that endometrial layer, and it also thins the cervical mucus so that sperm can swim through it easily and reach and fertilize the egg. In a nutshell, think of estrogen-induced changes as changes that make it easier for you to become pregnant if you were to have intercourse. It's signaling to your body that you are ready to go, and it's getting things prepared for that embryo to implant. Next, we're going to discuss progesterone. And progesterone is a hormone that supports menstruation, so your period or your cycle. And it also helps to maintain the early stages of a pregnancy if pregnancy were to occur. If you remember from the last episode, we talked about the corpus luteum, and that is a big, huge connection to progesterone because it's a gland that produces progesterone, and it's a really cool gland because it's temporary and it develops after you ovulate, so after you release an egg. It's responsible for maintaining those progesterone levels after conception and fertilization until the placenta is able to take over, and then the placenta at that time will make up the majority of the progesterone. My goodness, try and say that word 10 times fast. It's crazy. Anyways, if conception does not happen, the corpus luteum becomes the corpus albicans, which you will also remember from the previous episode. And if the egg is fertilized, so the egg and the sperm meet, progesterone then stimulates the growth of blood vessels that supply the lining of the womb, so the lining of your uterus that superficial layer, the endometrium. It supplies more blood vessels to that area so that it gets nice and thick, and there's lots of really healthy nutrients to nourish that early embryo. So it is really, really, really important in helping to establish and maintain the early stages of a pregnancy. What I think is super cool is that you can think of progesterone and estrogen as like a little team because they really do work together. They're two hormones that are produced from the ovaries, so they come from the same place, and they thicken and prepare the uterine lining for implantation. In a nutshell, estrogen, it really causes the thin uterine lining to thicken, and then progesterone causes that thickened uterine lining to develop characteristics needed for implantation and then also support the fetus until the placenta takes over. Next up, we have follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH for short. And this hormone helps control the menstrual cycle and stimulates the growth of the eggs in the ovaries. Follicle stimulating hormone is part of ovulation, and what it does is stimulates the follicle within the ovary to grow and start to mature a egg, so that once the egg is mature it can be released, and so on and so forth. FSH levels in women change throughout their menstrual cycle. So the highest levels happen right before the egg is released by the ovary. And it's really simple. It's basically a hormone that stimulates the follicle to grow, in a nutshell. Also, a quick side note and fun drinking game. Take a shot every time my dumbass says it in a nutshell, and you will probably be drunk by the end of this recording. Okay, next we're going to talk about luteinizing hormone, or LH for short. And this hormone works hand in hand with follicle stimulating hormone, because what LH does is triggers the release of the egg from the ovary. And when we can understand this on like a cellular level, it makes a lot of sense, because FSH, so follicle stimulating hormone, holy crap, that's a mouthful, that hormone tells a singular follicle within your ovary to produce a mature egg. What LH comes in and does is it tells that singular follicle that it's time to now release that egg. And we see LH levels rise right before ovulation. So these hormones have a lot to do with ovulation. And as the follicles in the ovary grow, they produce increasing amounts of estradiol and what's called inhibin. Now, inhibin is super important because what it does is it causes a fall in the follicle stimulating hormone, and that prevents too many follicles from developing and maturing each cycle. So the largest follicle is less dependent on follicle stimulating hormones for its growth the more it matures, and it's able to keep growing even if the levels fall. However, the smaller follicles cannot survive once the follicle stimulating hormone levels fall, due to what's called a negative feedback, which gives us then a singular dominant follicle, and that is going to release one mature egg, and that is the egg that's going to then travel down your fallopian tube, meet the spermie, and so on and so forth. Okay, moving on, we have the gonadotropin releasing hormone, another mouthful. GnRH for short. And this hormone has a very special and very specific job. And its job is to specifically trigger the production of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And that's it. That's all she wrote. Okay, so all of the hormones we've talked about thus far are hormones that can be found in people's bodies who were assigned female at birth, regardless if they're pregnant or not, because it has a lot to do with ovulation. And obviously, if you're not pregnant, you are still going to be ovulating and going through those menstrual cycles if you still have the reproductive parts to do so. Now, what we don't always have in our bodies is what's called human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG for short. HCG is produced by the cells that surround a growing human embryo, and they go on to form the placenta called trophoblasts. Once the placenta is formed, it also begins to produce human chorionic gonadotrophin. And you guessed it, this is the hormone that confirms if you are pregnant and can be found in your blood or your urine around 10 to 11 days after conception. When you're peeing on that little stick, it's looking for HCG, and that tells us that you only produce HCG once you are pregnant. HCG is the elite pregnancy hormone because of its unique role in supporting a pregnancy, and healthcare providers often measure your HCG count to confirm a pregnancy, but also to provide details on how your pregnancy is progressing, because in the first trimester, specifically like the first 10 weeks of pregnancy, they want to see your HCG numbers doubling and tripling and going up at a specific rate before it begins to then decline for the rest of your pregnancy. So it's a really good thing for healthcare providers to measure to let you know that your pregnancy is progressing well. It also tells the body to stop menstruation. So HCG's like, we're pregnant, get the fuck out of here, menstruation cycle. And it also stimulates the corpus luteum, which, remember, produces progesterone, that big word, just until the placenta is fully established, and then it takes over everything. Next up, we have relaxin. Relaxin is a reproductive hormone that is made and produced by your ovaries and the placenta. It loosens and relaxes your muscles and your joints and your ligaments, and it prepares your body for the magical stretching that it is going to do during birth. Relaxin also helps allow your skin to stretch to accommodate the baby. However, we don't just have relaxin when we become pregnant. Our ovaries actually make relaxin before you become pregnant. And the reason for that is, again, preparing the lining of the uterus so that if fertilization does occur, then it's more successful. And last but not least, the last hormone that we are going to cover in this episode is called prolactin. And prolactin is a hormone that's produced in what's called your pituitary gland. I literally just almost got those two switched. Produced in the pituitary gland because of its role in lactation. So prolactin causes the breast to grow and make milk during your pregnancy and after birth. So those levels are normally extremely high for pregnant women and also for new mothers, so that you're able to nurse your baby when he or she or they or them arrive. I hope that this was informational for you guys and that it helped to shed a little bit of light on hormones in the reproductive system for people who are assigned female at birth. If you guys want me to go more in depth with more hormones and just more specifics, I am super happy to do so. Just reach out and let me know. Thank you so much for joining me and listening. You guys are amazing and I love the support. I love seeing all the views go up because honestly, it means that I'm just educating and helping one more person, and that's what this is all about. If you want to see something specifically, again, reach out. I think the next episode, I want to talk more about the menstruation cycle itself, because we did mention a lot of hormones that are involved in that cycle. So with that being said, if you have any questions that you want me to address about the menstrual cycle, definitely reach out and let me know. In the meantime, thank you for listening again. You guys are rock stars. Don't forget to recommend this to a friend, to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to them, and leave a review because it'll bring more people to us and grow this little No Uterus, No Opinion gang. I hope you guys have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and we will talk soon. Take care.